Hey now, we are getting over, and I am the Silver King, Adam Silverstein, here to lead you through these hard times. With episode 858 of your favorite professional wrestling podcast. That's right, Getting Over is back once again, and it is Thursday, so you know exactly what that means. We are here to break down everything that happened over the last week across NXT and AEW. Originally, I was going to try to throw some additional content on today's show, possibly talk some AAA, some TNA wrestling. As it turns out, looking at the length of this show, just by covering NXT, AEW, and a couple additional items, I felt like it was going to be too long, so we're going to put a pin in that. We'll circle back next week. We should have plenty of time to discuss all of it, even if next week we may also be delivering to you an NXT Vengeance Day Ultimate Preview. A little bit unexpected, kind of came out of nowhere. Just a reminder that this week is a 4-episode week here on the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. Already in your feed are not one but 2 WWE episodes. The full breakdown of Raw and SmackDown, we published that on Tuesday as always. But this week, we actually split up the WWE Elimination Chamber Ultimate Preview. That way we could spend a little bit more time, not just talking about Elimination Chamber, but what we expect through the conclusion of the road to WrestleMania. So make sure you listen to both of those episodes, and make sure you remember that here at Getting Over,
it's all about the fight.
So head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify, leave a 5-star rating on Apple, take a little extra time, leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media at Getting Overcast on Twitter and Blue Sky. You get episode drops, news, analysis, highlights. You can send in questions and comments for the show. This weekend, you can vote in our pre- and post-show polls surrounding WWE Elimination Chamber. And I will say it now because I forgot to a moment ago. We will also have a WWE Elimination Chamber instant analysis podcast on Saturday night as soon as that show goes off the air. That is how you wrap up the 4-episode week, of course, with a 4th episode. But at Getting Overcast is not just where you find us on Twitter and Blue Sky. It's also where you can find us on YouTube. You can listen to the show. You can also watch full-length video interviews that Silver King conducts with some of the biggest professional wrestlers, of course, in the world. Across the board, wherever you want to find us on social media, you can do it at Getting Overcast. Now, as always, there are timestamps in the episode description. You can skip around between NXT and AEW if you so choose. I do hope you listen to the entire show. And as I said earlier, we are going to cover everything that happened across both of those brands this week.
But I'm afraid I've got some news.
3 items here off the top of the show to discuss. First, Getting Over was able to confirm on Thursday that ESPN Unlimited is now available at no additional cost for Comcast Xfinity subscribers. That means you will now have access to WWE Premium Live events like subscribers to most other systems. The lone major exception remains YouTube TV. We are still multiple months away from that. I'm not sure it's going to get activated by WrestleMania. My understanding, it's going to be the fall, probably even around SummerSlam, hopefully beforehand, possibly after. The reason this has taken so long with YouTube TV, it's purely technical when it comes to authentication through Google's systems. There's also talk about ESPN Unlimited content being available directly on the YouTube TV platform, so you wouldn't have to go to the ESPN app to watch WWE PLEs. That would be great because the ESPN app is horrible, as we've told you many times before. Now, NordVPN, they don't get promotion on this episode anymore. They only get the WWE shows, but I will remind you, you can sign up at nordvpn.com/gettingover and not worry about any of this. Just watch every WWE PLE on Netflix along with Raw, SmackDown, and NXT. WWE announced Wednesday details about NXT Stand and Deliver, which will not take place on WrestleMania 42 weekend in Las Vegas. Instead, it will air on Saturday, April 4th, live from the factory in St. Louis, which hosted that big NXT TV special last year when Randy Orton fought Javon Evans. This is a relatively sudden change. Getting Over heard earlier this month that WWE's internal calendar had Stand and Deliver set for Las Vegas on Saturday morning, just like last year. There are 2 ways to look at this change. The pessimistic side is that NXT is no longer getting the rub from WrestleMania weekend, both in terms of hype and attendance. With so many wrestling fans in town, Stand and Deliver is usually the best attended show for NXT each year, with one of its best crowds too. Now it's going to be in a small venue with a seated capacity of like 2,500. Over 8,000 people were there last year. There were 17,000 at NXT Stand and Deliver in 2024. Now the 50% drop off from 24 to 25 was due to the early start time on the West Coast last year. But even worse is that Stand and Deliver is now going to go head to head with the Final Four, one of the biggest sporting events of the entire year. That is straight up nonsense. Why would you not run it on Sunday between the Final Four and the National Championship, or do it the week after WrestleMania on a Saturday? I don't understand this at all. Now, the optimistic side of the move is, well, Stand and Deliver in 2025 was a marginal disaster. The show was entertaining, it was well received, and by the time the main event rolled around, everyone was energized. But people were exhausted when it started because it aired the same day as WrestleMania Night 1, and the show was on the West Coast. Call time was insanely early, something like 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. The show began at 9 a.m. local time. Wrestlers and fans were sluggish. Top-level attendance from superstars, it was down significantly because the WWE Hall of Fame was not only the night before, it went late. Now, back in the day, scheduling was so easy. SmackDown was on Thursday. The Hall of Fame was Friday. NXT TakeOver on Saturday. WrestleMania on Sunday. It was easy. Moving SmackDown to Friday and adding a second night of WrestleMania has complicated both the Hall of Fame and Stand and Deliver, more so when it's on the West Coast. And next year, with a WrestleMania 43 in Saudi Arabia, it stands to reason NXT won't make that trip at all. So this might be a 2-year deal where NXT is on its own weekend. The further problem with doing it this year is the star power on the brand is down significantly. Even if the card features big matches for NXT, they may not be big matches to attract the casual fan, like Obafemi, Trick Williams, and Javon Evans last year. What I would do is run the Hall of Fame on Thursday, a 2-hour SmackDown on Friday starting at 7 p.m., and then NXT Stand and Deliver from 9 p.m. until midnight, at least when you're on the West Coast, which this WrestleMania is going to be. That clears up Saturday. It gets Hall of Fame away from being a late night show. People can get honored in regular time. Yeah, it requires people to be in the city a day earlier, but okay, you get it in the afternoon, you go to Hall of Fame, and that's kicking off the weekend, rather than SmackDown being the thing that kicks off the weekend. In fact, I actually think WWE runs a kickoff show earlier Friday, and that is what begins the weekend. Then they do SmackDown, then the Hall of Fame, and then, of course, they do the countdown shows ahead of each night of WrestleMania. But don't forget, NXT Stand and Deliver in Philadelphia, night 1 in the afternoon. I just told you, it did, 17,000 tickets? So this is not something that should continue when WrestleMania moves back to the United States in, 2028 at this point? Now, beyond all of this, by the way, NXT Premium Live events appear to be airing live on Peacock still. The original WWE deal expired. So this is clearly a new arrangement that has not been announced. I've tried to obtain the specifics of the contract and what exactly is happening here. To this point, I have been stonewalled. So I'll keep at it. I'll try to ascertain that information and present it to you. But everything happening with NXT Premium Live events over the last couple of months, Vengeance Day getting, pushed off, Valentine's Day weekend until March, and then airing randomly from the WWE Performance Center, and then Stand and Deliver being moved up an entire week. This is NXT television is doing its best ratings of the year of, I'd say, the last 9 months, maybe longer. It's incredibly confusing what's happening. They got to get their ducks in a row and figure some shit out. And lastly, AJ Styles appeared on the Talkin' Shop podcast hosted by the Good Brothers for his first interview after his retirement tribute on Monday Night Raw. I've yet to hear the entire interview, but I saw 2 long clips, and I could only laugh at the discourse that some tried to create around AJ Styles going to AEW. The main takeaway was Styles basically, without saying the words, telling fans STFU about him going into the Hall of Fame, considering this ridiculous discourse that WWE, gave him a coaching and legends deal and is inducting him into the Hall of Fame solely to keep him away from AEW. Styles even admonished people for suggesting he doesn't make his own decisions and doesn't stick by his word, which is asinine that he would have to do that, but that's the state of wrestling tribalism these days. The dude spent a decade with WWE. He is as much of a WWE superstar as he is a TNA legend now. He stated a half dozen times he was done wrestling and fully retired because he was starting to feel long-term physical effects. He laughed on Twitter about an assertion that he would go to AEW. He talked about planning to coach and develop talent in WWE multiple times. That was something he said in an interview, that he's going to continue working with WWE and nothing is going to change that relationship. I don't know about Styles being a full-time trainer or coach in NXT, but I could see him being a specialist who works directly with individual talents, takes them under his wing, helps them fully form their games, whether improving execution of moves, developing finishers, stuff like that. But this has always been his goal, to spend as much time as possible with his family and help WWE develop the next crop of superstars. It's actually insane to think that WWE is going to have Shawn Michaels, CM Punk, and AJ Styles as the three primary men developing talent. That's absurd. Legitimately three of the best ever, including two of the best performers ever to lace up their boots, meaning between the ropes. And then on the women's side, you have Sarah Del Rey, obviously, but Natalya runs the dungeon in Orlando. It seems like Bayley is going to have an outsized role there eventually. I'm going off on a tangent. The point is, there was never any part of Styles that was leaving the WWE ecosystem. And people trying to portray that AEW had a chance, all they did was basically mess with their fans who wanted to buy into that because for one reason or another, they're sycophants. So Styles wasn't leaving WWE. WWE did not sign him to a coaching and legends contract to keep him from AEW. He was going to do it anyway, and WWE didn't need to do that because he was never going to go. And yes, he's really retired. I don't know what else there is to say. Congratulations to AJ Styles on having an incredible career. By the way, getting a great retirement ceremony Monday night on Raw. And I can't wait to see what he actually does with all of this developmental talent in the WWE ecosystem. Now, we'll probably have an update with more information on Styles and NXT and all this on buymeacoffee.com/gettingover, because here on this show,
I happen to love the number 5.
and I hope you do as well. It's $5 a month, $50 for the entire year. And if you pay that, you can become a Getting Overhead. But what that means is you not only get that moniker, which really means nothing. We know you love the show. You also get bonus audio, the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reactions to every major show, and you get exclusive news analysis posts every week. All you have to do to get it is sign up at buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. You get the extra content. We get a couple bucks to keep the lights on, and we will continue delivering performance-enhancing audio into your ear holes. One more time, buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. All right, let's get to breaking down everything that happened across NXT and AEW. There are timestamps. You can skip if you decide that you want to listen to one or the other, but just listen to the rest of the show. You're already 1/3 of the way through it. Starting with NXT. The NXT Women's Championship was on the line. JC Jane defending against ZaRuca. This opened hour 2. Zarya was uncharacteristically happy during the babyface entrance, even putting Soul on her shoulders. After the announce and before the bell even rang, Zarya speared the Soul out of Ruka's body, hitting an F5, screaming at her before leaving the ring. Jane immediately hit Rolling Encore at the bell to retain the title in, I think, 5 seconds. Zarya pulled Ruka out of the ring, gave her another F5 on the announce table, grabbed her hair, kissed her on the forehead, and yelled, "Snatch that soul, bitch." This was a mouth agape shocker. Not that Zarya turned. We knew that was happening, but the way it was executed, perfection achieved by everyone involved. The overly enthusiastic work at the beginning was a nice prelude to the turn, and doing it not after the bell rang or at the end of the match, but before anything even got going. That was the least expected and most surprising way to execute the breakup. Reminder, Zarya is the victim. She has done nothing wrong this entire time. The finisher was twice called F5, even though I believe it has its own name. Commentary, they've not done a great job establishing Zarya's moves, but it hardly mattered because she looked like an absolute beast here. I actually thought the post-match attack would have been more significant, considering how long the hatred and jealousy has been bubbling up. One F5 into the announce table, when so much more could have been achieved, was a bit light, and the segment overall was way shorter than expected because of it. But this was just the first bit between them. I presume this will go all the way to Stand and Deliver in a non-title match, Soul then getting called up to the main roster afterward. And I don't want it to be lost that JC was incredible selling this as an innocent bystander. Mouth open in shock, laughing, foaming then at the mouth, perfect rolling encore, and celebration. Just an A+ across the board. JC celebrated with Fatal Influence backstage, only to get confronted by Zarya, who said that she now owes her. Jane mocked her, expecting anything. Zarya reminded that she's never been defeated by the group, demanding her own title opportunity next week. If not, she said she would lay JC out exactly the same way she did Soul. Now, Vengeance Day is next week, but this got booked for NXT TV on Tuesday instead of the PLE on Saturday. That did not make a shred of sense to me, considering this is the main women's title, the top women's story, and the PLE is only 4 days after TV. How is that match not on what, to this point, because it's the only one, is the biggest card of the year so far? Now, this could be a plausible way to put the championship on Zarya and build to an NXT title match at Stand and Deliver, Zarya and Soul. But considering they never gave us a status update on Soul, such as her needing medical attention or anything of the sort, the presumption is that Ruca is simply going to retaliate next week, caught Zarya the title, furthering the build for a non-title match between them at the biggest show of the year, Stand and Deliver. Soul and Zarya going into that PLE as champion, one of them, so that their match could main event. That is certainly a better concept. I'm just not sure a quick change with the heel entering as champion is the right move, considering Zarya has been screwed out of this opportunity for over a year now. To that end, I presume they simply have a stipulation match on that show. And by the way, since I saw this take rolling around, speaking of stupid shit on the internet, fans cheering Zarya for attacking Soul is not an example of WWE getting the booking wrong. NXT fans love faces and heels the same. They were cheering for the moment, cheering for Zarya finally standing up for herself. So they were happy. But as we've said before, Zarya is the one that has been wronged this entire time. So there is a legitimate opportunity to do a double turn. And I would like to see Soul get a heel run before getting called up to the main roster. In fact, I thought Soul was the one who should have turned on Zarya, complaining all the time because Soul's the star. Everyone knows it. She's the one at WrestleMania. She's the one wrestling on SmackDown, so on and so forth. That's the way it should have gone, just to be a little bit more fun, a little bit more unique. But it's really tough to argue with the way they did this turn and how shocking it was, despite everyone knowing it was coming. Tatum Paxley got a close-up promo while sitting on the stairs in the crowd, saying she's twisted herself into knots, trying to find love and gain acceptance. Now she's done attempting to change and be perfect. Instead, she's going to listen to the fans who have never once asked her to be someone else. They only want her to be herself, even the weird parts. Paxley said she would beat Izzy Dame at Vengeance Day, win the North American Championship, not just for herself, but for all the fans. Dame showed up at the other end of the row in the crowd, and as they started going at each other with what I'm assuming were some planted fans separating them, the segment just ended and someone made an entrance to the ring. We'll talk about that in a second. Later backstage, Izzy told Robert Stone she would sit down with Tatum next week, but only with a no-touch clause. The close of this segment was extremely odd, again, with the match entrances starting as they were still in the crowd. But Paxley's promo on its own was fantastic. She's so natural on the mic. It remains silly that she's moved down an entire rung in the division because she was just NXT champion, especially because this feud had no need for a title. Blake Monroe should have won the title back from Thea Hale and then feuded with Jada Parker over it. Then you have Tatum and Izzy doing a blood feud. The winner can advance to the top title. And it makes sense, but they didn't want to take the easy way for some reason. I'm not sure what plans are for Tatum at this point. She should be winning this match. And then, assuming Soul Zarya is not contested over the NXT title, Paxley should be beating Jane for that strap at Stand and Deliver, and then holding it for an extended period as the top woman on the brand. But, you know, if she wins this match, she's going to be North American champion. And then it really wouldn't make sense for her to challenge for the main NXT title unless you had something else special in store for Stand and Deliver. So I don't know what direction they're going to go. But what I do know, Tatum was excellent here. I've said it before. She's the best character actor in NXT, one of the best in WWE. It's a smart decision to show her gaining confidence, not relying on others. It's the appropriate character direction for her. So the speed tournament continued. Thea Hale, opened. Thea Hale beat Monroe in 1 minute because as they were brawling with Blake dominating early, the referee got distracted, allowing Jada to crush Monroe with Hypnotic ringside. Hale capitalized with a swinging neckbreaker, got the win. It made a lot more sense to put Blake in this match given the booking, so retroactively, I approve. Monroe also posted a really fun social media video during the week about her training to win things in 3 minutes and all different facets of her life. It's going to be curious to see how this eventual match is booked, and frankly, it's crucial that Monroe beats Parker. That's going to be tough to do because Jada just came back and similarly needs to win. I have no idea how they are going to pull this off. There was an NXT Chronicle video special for Joe Hendry. He did an entire biography breakdown about not believing WWE was a real dream growing up. So he focused on judo, music, and acting until New Year's Eve at age 24 when he started training in Glasgow, Scotland. And he did that with Robbie Brookside. Then he became an amateur wrestler, winning 2 gold medals in Great Britain due to his judo background, suddenly wrestling the likes of Cody Rhodes and Kurt Angle in Europe, while simultaneously getting into music even further as the pandemic hit. Hendry explained how that gave him time and opportunity to morph into what he is today and learn how to capitalize on his growing fame through social media and TikTok. He said the NXT Championship is the culmination of all this hard work over the years. Extremely well done. Smart way to fully introduce Hendry to the NXT audience because he rose into being champion through his work in TNA, not WWE. There are types of video packages that WWE needs to be creating more often on the main roster. This is an example of them. You can't just do it in NXT. You need the bigger audience when you call up some of these people to get a more full understanding of who they are, why they're there, and why you should root for them. There was also an NXT Origins package for Damian Priest, similar to what Finn Balor got last month. I don't understand at all why they are doing those. Tag Team Championship, Dark State defending against Vanity Project. Osiris Griffin had his best moment in NXT with a hot tag midway through this match. The boys were working really well together. Saquon Sugars landed a missile dropkick aided Doomsday device, with Jackson Drake getting a leg on the rope for a break, even though the dude's arm was under the rope anyway. That led to a scuffle ringside, allowing Tony D'Angelo to suddenly appear, hit Sugars with his lifting spinebuster into the ring apron, did not land flat. And then he threw Brad Baylor atop his body for a shock title change to open the show. Crazy that Dark State got baby face cheers and chants during this match. That's how well Vanity Project operates as heels. This was a necessary change to hopefully refresh this division. These guys are now the youngest tag team champions in brand history. I believe we said last week that even though the NXT tag team division is in shambles and most of the teams are really non-starters, they still somehow manage each time they're out to put on chaotic
Banger
matches. And this was no exception. Vanity Project sold their asses off for Dark State. They looked as if they had made legitimate improvement as a pair. Vic Joseph unfortunately gave away the finish because a few minutes before it ended, he wondered out loud whether Vanity had to worry about D'Angelo. Well, guess who showed up and immediately factored into the finish? That was disappointing. But the booking was not. The rise of Vanity Project has been meteoric from the WWE ID program through Evolve into NXT. The cream rises to the top always. And I kind of wonder how Zeta Steel feels watching this go down in AEW, doing pretty much nothing with that go nowhere faction, while the faction she was in WWE is now tag team champions and heavily featured on the developmental show. 3.75 stars B+. Congratulations to a couple guys who have incredibly high ceilings going forward. Miles Bourne in a backstage interview said the odds are stacked against him, as they have been his entire career, including when he walked into a Division I football team with no experience and tried out for WWE during the pandemic. He was confident that he's the one man who can beat Page, saying he's not over his head, but exactly where he belongs. Bourne said he won't let anyone tell him what he can and cannot do. He will no longer be known as the Deaf Kid, but the new North American champion. Certainly his best extended promo in NXT. It was scripted out, but he delivered it like it was natural. And for someone who has trouble hearing, I imagine that could be pretty damn tough to do. Not that we're grading him on a curve, but that is worth consideration. B+ promo. There was a part of it where he was asked how he felt ahead of the biggest match of his career. The dude was number one contender against Obafemi on a PLE. I love Ethan Page. Many of you love Ethan Page. This is not a bigger match than that. Come on. Now, Ricky Saints backstage bragged to Page about his guest star spot on a CW show. Page told Saints not to worry about his injured ankle, saying they could amputate his foot and it wouldn't matter because Bourne always cracks when the lights are the brightest. Vanity then came in bragging to Page and Saints about already becoming champions just a month after joining NXT. Saints pointed out how Page can retain and Saints can win the NXT title, and all 5 of them can run the brand as champions simultaneously. Then they quoted the Harbaughs with, "Who got it better than us?" That whole gimmick. The gassing up continued backstage with Vanity all ready to go out partying, putting Saints over for his acting performance. Then they had kind of shaded Hendry's video package with Saints saying that he'd have an absolute experience next week to combat any planned concert. Vanity then went over plans to help Page retain his title before Shiloh Hill, Hank, and Tank interrupted, covered in grease, holding the steering wheel from Vanity's car, leading to a backstage brawl that presumably, I thought, took Vanity away from helping Ethan in his title match. Page and Vanity, they remain incredible together. Saints has been a real strong enough addition, even if he wasn't exactly needed. But once Page left and it was just Saints and the boys, they were hysterical together also. It's just impossible to watch a segment involving all of these guys and not come out of it entertained. Personality plus across the board from one of them to the next, and the idea of them just continuing to feed one another's egos, it works. As far as Hill running with Hank and Tank, I'm unenthused. They fit together perfectly as characters, okay. But while Hank and Tank are over in the ring, their gimmick will not work long term, and Hill has way too much upside to get stuck in that vortex. So hopefully that's just a temporary alignment. North American title, Page defending against Bourne. Before the match, Bourne got a bonus sentimental video package that included a recap of his relationship with Page. He also got an updated logo and I believe a new entrance theme. Weird that his Titantron included an audio visualizer considering, well, he's legally deaf. Page demanded he be called the greatest North American champion during his ring announce. Bourne worked the injured ankle immediately, but took Ego's Edge into the announce table early. Bourne rallied with some high-impact offense and a fisherman suplex. Page answered with an Ego's Edge back inside and a superplex for near falls. Bourne ate confidence breaker, bouncing off the ropes and hitting Bourne again, but he was unable to cover due to pain and exhaustion. Vanity ran down. Drake nailed Bourne in the head with a title, but he kicked out of an ensuing cover as Hank, Tank, and Hill evened the sides. Saints then ran in to distract the referee. He undid the top turnbuckle, but Hendry pulled him down off the top rope. Bourne escaped the third Ego's Edge attempt, pushed Page into the turnbuckle exposed by Saints, and hit Bourne again, coming back for the upset win to become the new NXT North American champion in the main event. The crowd was wild all match, and they came alive for Bourne in the finish. It was an awesome moment for him, made even better and more emotional, because he ran over to his mom and hugged her real tight while holding the title with the show going off the air. You love to see that. The change was telegraphed, just given the length of their feud, plus Bourne getting 2 feature segments on one show and a total visual repackage, even if it was kind of generic. But Page had to drop the title to someone sooner than later, and better him lose it to a young guy who can actually benefit from the elevation than another veteran. Page had a tremendous North American title reign, arguably the best ever in reality, not just kayfabe, put on one great match after another, wide variety of talent, and it was sad to see it end. Whether it's the main roster or moving back to the main NXT title picture, the arrow continues to point up for him. Bourne now has to deliver in this role. He hasn't exactly shown the personality to do so before, but hopefully he's ready this time. Overall, the match was great. Real solid traditional work, nothing too flashy. Bourne is like an early 2000s wrestler trapped in the skin of a Gen Z guy. Not the worst thing to be by any means, but he does need to figure out how to differentiate himself other than his personal trials. Kudos to Page, like I kind of just said, all-time reign, great work, heel segments, matches, wide variety of opponents. He carried the men's division whenever Oba Femi, Trick Williams, and Javon Evans were not on the screen. And now that they're all gone, he's carrying the men's division in NXT. Ren QCC backstage were enthralled with the ZaRuca drama before Kendall Gray went into trainer mode, ready to work with Ren Sinclair and help her win the speed tournament. Kalani Jordan came through bragging about being the first to make Lola Vice tap out, calling herself the standout. Gray took exception, and Vice attacked, leading to a pull-apart. Dark State later flipped out backstage, screaming for Robert Stone when Lola got in their way and said she needed to talk to him first. They would never talk to him on the show. Vice found Stone, demanded an NXT Underground match, which was immediately set for Vengeance Day. I like that booking. Underground matches are cool as hell. Lola shines in them. Putting that on a PLE, it's particularly cool. It's going to be a little bit difficult logistically. I'm also into the standout as Lonnie's moniker. That works. And while Ren is not exactly going to get the ring time I want doing a speed tournament, at least she's getting a bit of focus. She deserves better. And I hate to even say this because you all know I hate the speed title and don't believe it means anything. But Fallon Henley should not be holding that strap. So I would have Ren go through this tournament, win the title. You have Ren as speed champion. You have Kendall as Evolve champion. Both, not the strongest titles, but at least they're both strapped up. It allows Fallon Henley to either move up to the main roster or, we're talking about all the different incarnations of things that can happen. If Tatum wins the North American title and you have Sol and Zarya fighting each other, what's JC Jane going to do at Stand and Deliver? Well, you know what? She could fight Fallon Henley because JC has been a bit of a bitch to Fallon for, months now. And Fallon's kind of taken it in stride, occasionally giving her a side eye. Eventually, Fatal Influence needs to break up unless they're all getting called up to the main roster. And man, Fallon and JC would be a hot ass feud, and Henley winning the NXT championship would be awesome. So again, just another option. Speed Championship was on the line for the men. Jasper Troy defending against Eli Knight and Ilio LaFleur. The gimmick here was the match was 7 minutes because it's the first ever triple threat. Troy came out looking absolutely ridiculous with, I believe, 3 chains around his neck and in his arms, and they clanked around sounding like crap. Knight did something I have never seen before early in the match, a push-off moonsault utilizing the top turnbuckle with his feet. Knight also landed a flying Rough Rider, which looked great. LaFleur took Troy down with a sunset flip powerbomb inside, landing an over-the-ropes apron DDT on Knight. He added a 450 on Troy for a broken fall with 2 minutes remaining. LaFleur avoided a Razor's Edge and Black Hole Slam, taking Troy down with a head scissors slam before Knight landed a sky-high moonsault. However, Knight was unable to cover because he was selling the move. Fleur ran in to get the cover and pinned the champion, grabbing the title with 70 seconds remaining. Probably the second best speed match ever, certainly the best since it moved to NXT. And you know why? Because it was a real match that went nearly 7 minutes, not some rushed bullshit. As I said last week, if NXT wants to take this title and turn it into a cruiserweight championship, go for it. You have the horses to make it work, but they got to get away from this speed concept because the stupid tournaments and 3-minute matches not only struggle for relevancy, they take away valuable time from the NXT product. This was a lot of fun. You bet it was. Great work from Knight and LaFleur. Troy did well enough. He was clearly the weak link between the three. And man, I just don't know what they are going to do with him. They should not have called him up. Sean Legacy fought Keanu Carver. Legacy used a super kick to prevent a charging Carver from kind of running him into the crow's nest after Keanu dominated the onset of the match. Legacy got some offense with a springboard 450, but got sliced bread thwarted before he was pounced halfway across the ring. Carver then, thankfully, debuted a new finisher, a Falcon Arrow front slam for the win. Much better than that crap he was using before, so definitely a step in the right direction. Match was not anything. Carver remains not ready for prime time. Hopefully he works through all of this rough edges on screen because clearly they are going to give him ample opportunities to do exactly that. Cale Dixon fought Uriah Connors. This match just started in the ring after a break, no entrances. Everyone was ringside except Charlie Dempsey, who was watching backstage. Dixon ejected over the ropes with a modified Suzuki special before hitting a really cool tornado splash for a near fall. Connors got double boots up to block a moonsault, coming back with a Bazaiku knee to win clean. Connors badly needs to cut his hair. It is disgusting. The motley crew of Birthright, which is not officially named, they need more of a unifying principle visually, and Dixon continues to impress with his in-ring skill. He's going to be much better off working solo. Those were my main takeaways coming off this very low-card match. Overall, this was the best NXT show of the year, not simply because there were developments and title changes, but rather the logic of what happened and why. And it finally feels like the brand is off and running with what we might as well call its 3.0 form, just for lack of a better term. It was a tremendous palate cleanser after that real awkward Monday Night Raw. And as we've said, the ratings are going up for this show. People are paying attention despite losing so many big names. I mean, Stephanie Vaquer, they lost the 3 biggest men and women on this brand, 4 if you include Lash Legend. Stephanie Vaquer, Julia, and Jordan Grace, Javon Evans, Obafemi, and Trick Williams. And people are paying more attention than they were before. That is absolutely crazy. Let's move over to AEW. Now, before we get into the full breakdown of Dynamite and Collision, I do have 2 notes for you. First, 5 of 14 matches this week were storyline relevant. That's 36%. There was a ton of stuff just thrown on both of these shows, Dynamite and Collision. If you want to be generous, you could probably throw 2 matches to the other side, make it 7 of 14, 50%, but we're still way below that threshold that we want, 75%. of matches to matter. That should not be so hard, especially when you're building to a pay-per-view like Revolution. The other note, MJF defended the AEW title, the main title in this company, against Zilla Fatu at a House of Glory show last week. This allowed him to basically cut a promo on the entire bloodline without wrestling in WWE to do it. Andrade El Idolo distracted him during the match, angry that MJF is giving out opportunities to independent wrestlers rather than him. Legitimate point, dude. MJF has a number one contender in Hangman Page, who had to earn it by winning a bunch of matches, yet he's defending the company's top title against nobodies on an indie. What about Andrade? What about Swerve Strickland? All these, Kenny Omega, all these guys who were contending for this didn't win the number one contendership, but Zilla Fatu gets a title match? Make that make sense. All right, let's get into the full breakdown. As always, we do it by storyline, not by show. On Collision, the trios titles were on the line. Jet Set Rodeo retained over The Demand. Not only did the heels get the title match for no reason, simply because they demanded it, the faces needed a Jack Perry distraction, so Hangman Page, the number one contender for the AEW title, could hit a buckshot lariat and pin Ricochet. I couldn't decide whether to roll my eyes harder at that or Perry now carrying around a knife like he's a guy who lives in the jungle and needs to make camp, so he's out there as a survivalist doing it all himself. I mean, come on. On Dynamite, Kevin Knight beat Mansoor in 3 minutes for no reason whatsoever. And then, after the bell, he grabbed a mic and said the MJF Hangman stipulation would either be a one-way no disqualification or a Texas death match. And I'm sitting here like, what? When did one-way DQ ever get mentioned? Knight then told Page he wanted an AEW title match after Hangman beats MJF. Why are you saying that in the middle of the ring with a mic in your hand when he's your partner and you guys talk privately backstage? It is crazy how infrequent all three of them are, doing things together when they're trios champions. So this Knight promo, big woof. Now, before we get to the MJF Hangman segment from Dynamite, it's important for us to rehash what happened last week. Page, already the number one contender for the AEW title, told MJF he wanted a stipulation added to their match, and on his own accord, without prompting, he said he would be willing to never challenge for the AEW title again if he loses, as long as a stipulation is added. Now, even with that said, it's fair for one to assume Hangman would only agree to that if he, the challenger, gets to pick the stipulation. But no, there was some convoluted back and forth with Page, who said MJF needs to suggest a stipulation, and then he will have to agree to it. In that same segment, about 5 fans chanted Texas death, so MJF spoke it into existence on the mic, and it was the only stipulation they talked about as an option. But they were still going to think about it for a week, and Page wanted to agree to whatever stipulation MJF suggested, assuming he would agree. So AEW made it clear in that moment and after the show that the stipulation was not official. And instead, they would do a segment this week in order to decide what the stipulation would be. The only reason to do that would be if it was going to be something other than what was uttered in that initial segment, right? So I lambasted the convolution of this and the fallout from it on last week's show. So I was tickled when MJF tried to tweet an explanation for the necessity of the follow-up segment. He wrote this on his social media. Quote, "We both pick a stipulation. We both have to agree to the stipulation. Hangman's given his word. If we do, he will never challenge for the world title again. On Wednesday, we decide the stipulation for our match. It's not complicated. You're just dumb." To which I say, bro, considering you felt the need to tweet an explanation, that means it either was unnecessarily complicated, facts, or the segment last week did a terrible job explaining what you were trying to accomplish, also facts. So this week, MJF and Hangman did a face-to-face in the ring with Tony Schiavone positioned in the corner, I figured for no reason whatsoever. MJF first focused on people smoking weed in Denver. He threw his gum into the crowd because they're garbage. He suggested they simply flip a coin between Page's suggestion, Texas death match, again, that was chanted by the crowd, not said by Page, and his stipulation, a one-way no disqualification match. The thing we never heard of until Knight spoiled it 30 minutes earlier on the same show. Remember, they were supposed to spend a week thinking about stipulations. And what they came up with was Texas Death, which Page never actually suggested. It's just his typical match type. And something that MJF somehow told Knight, Page's friend and partner, before revealing on television. Anyway, the one-way deal, which he called the greatest stipulation ever conceived, would ensure MJF cannot be disqualified no matter what he does, while Page could lose if he steps out of line at all. It's truly not that different from a regular match. If you think about it, MJF could lose any match by disqualification with a weapon and the title wouldn't change hands. But yes, being able to use weapons on your opponent one way, it is an advantage in terms of winning or losing, especially if your opponent is putting never fighting for the title again on the line. Hangman did not start his promo by screaming this time. He talked about all the ways he could maim MJF in Texas Death, rendering his cheating ways useless, and he called the one-way no DQ dog shit because he's edgy. Page said he wants to leave no doubt at Revolution, and if he can't beat a piece of shit like MJF, he doesn't deserve the title. So fans chanted piece of shit because, cursing. Despite all of that, knowing what was on the line, him never challenging for this title again, this babyface Hangman, he was okay with flipping a coin and letting fate decide. Remember, the entire point of this segment was for them to come to an agreement. That agreement was not a stipulation, but rather a coin flip. So MJF flips, it lands on heads, he wins, the coin goes back in his pocket. As MJF tried to walk off, though, Hangman demanded to see the quarter. So Jet Speed and Brodito walked out, forcing MJF back into the ring. Page gets the coin, puts it in his hand. The camera zooms in. You can't see shit. One shiny surface, he flips it over another shiny surface. So Shivani gets back on the mic, doesn't initially say that it's a double-sided coin, even though we all knew that was the gimmick. But instead, he goes, I got a call on the headset. Tony Khan is talking to me. He has decided, because it was a double-sided coin, it's going to be a Texas Death match. So, just to recap, they told us the stipulation last week, claimed they didn't, insisted that they were delaying it 1 week so they could come to a mutual agreement about the stipulation, even though Hangman was putting his long-term title contention at stake either way as a babyface who was already number one contender. Then we get to Dynamite. Knight spoils MJF's suggested stipulation 30 minutes before the segment. No other potential stipulations or options are introduced. And at the end, there isn't even an agreement over the stipulation, which is what was promoted. Khan just decided it would be Texas Death. I'm going to repeat this later. I saw people crowing online about how incredible this segment was. And I sat watching this thinking it was some of the most convoluted bullshit I have seen in a long, long time. And that is saying something. It's not that dissimilar from what AEW did with MJF and the Hurt Syndicate. Kept pushing it out, promising a resolution, took like 2 months to get one, and the whole thing went away in a couple of weeks anyway. This would have been so much more impactful if last week was Page saying he wanted a stipulation and MJF saying he needed to think of his own in order to accept, so give me a week and I'll give you an answer. And then this week, Page could have suggested Texas Death, and MJF could have said, if I accept that and I win, I need your word that you will never wrestle for the AEW title again. So much simpler, so much more straightforward, no confusion. And it still allows AEW to put the will not challenge stipulation as Page's word, as opposed to something written into a contract. Because what's going to happen is that he'll eventually break it and challenge anyway in the future if he does lose at Revolution. And it's possible he could win, of course. This had so much potential. The pieces were there. Texas Death won't challenge if I lose. And they just mucked it up. And then they tried to defend it, or MJF did at least, as if it wasn't convoluted, and we're all idiots for wanting logical storytelling on wrestling. Give me an effing break.
Well, that was a disaster. What the hell was that? What was that, huh? This is unacceptable.
On Dynamite, there was a nice video package of Swerve Strickland flipping a switch and destroying Kenny Omega last week. It coincided with Prince Nana cutting a promo on the announce table, introducing Swerve as the most dangerous man in AEW. So Swerve, who was a babyface despite never turning face, now he's back heel. His first line, "Did you miss me, sickos?" Playing into that nickname is so freaking cringe. The rest of this was much better. He was angry Omega called someone else dangerous because that challenged him as a threat. Then he took back his previously stated regrets because the prior heel version was the most successful run on top of the company, promising to again be the most dangerous man in the company. When he dropped the mic, his theme started with most dangerous man a few times, so they were really beating us over the head with that moniker. But it was a great promo from Swerve. He reestablished his heel persona and his aggressiveness, and he's right. He's better on the heel side, and AEW was better when he was champion. Now we'll just have to see what comes from this. On Dynamite, Brody King immediately responded to Swerve backstage, saying he's the more dangerous man, and after he beats Mark Davis in a random match booked for no reason, he'll prove it. And yeah, King did beat Davis rather handily, though it was, of course,
big meaty man slapping meat. That's what I want.
The most notable part of this match, though, was a crowd chant as F. Don Callis became a call and response with F. Ice 2. So a real loud back and forth that was actually quite memorable and a pretty cool moment. That's a good engaged crowd right there when you can do something like that. King grabbed the mic after the match, literally calling himself #1 in violence, which just made me laugh. Someone saying something like that. He repeated that he's the most dangerous man. We got a flash of Swerve watching this backstage. Both King and Bandito said they wanted to fight at Revolution. So Andrade El Idolo came out with no prompting and no storyline reason and pointed at Bandito. The assumption is that Swerve will be fighting King because they both stated separately that they were the most dangerous men in AEW. So Swerve and King are going to fight over a comment made by Omega without interacting with each other. These are pay-per-view matches. Both are going to be great because all 4 of these wrestlers are awesome. The storyline of Most Dangerous Man in AEW is actually solid, but setting the match before even having a single confrontation between them and then booking the other with a single look on the ramp, basically an open challenge, that's the definition of laziness. That's matchmaking, not booking. And you're doing it for a pay-per-view despite having multiple weeks left until that show actually happens. On Collision, Don Callis' family beat Death Riders in 15 minutes. I gave it relevancy credit because they're all feuding, but it was another random assortment of competitors without rhyme or reason. This was the 4th 6-man between these factions in a month. And that's just the 6-man versions. Konosuke Takeshita beat Wheeler Yuta, who was wearing a beanie with Raging Fire. On Dynamite, Jon Moxley beat El Clone in a Continental title eliminator match. No reason for it happening, of course, especially since Clone just lost the TNT title match less than a month ago. It feels like Mox is the opening match of every Dynamite and basically wrestles on every single show at this point. Mox countered a paradigm shift, and then he hit a Death Rider for the win. He countered into a paradigm shift and then hit Death Rider for the win. On Collision, the CMLL Championship was on the line. Claudio Castagnoli retained over Josh Alexander in the match of the night, despite the ridiculous booking in the first place, considering Alexander, who has never won shit and therefore had no business challenging for this title, not only got the opportunity, but got it because Don Callis wanted the strap. So he was just randomly chosen. Beyond that, did anyone else recognize that people are criticizing WWE for buying AAA, assuming they're not going to respect Lucha Libre? And the main CMLL title was contested between Caucasian dudes from Switzerland and Canada on an American B show with no build. Can you imagine if the AAA Mega title was in a match like Rusev against Ethan Page on Evolve? People would lose their shit. Also, Tony Khan was out in the ring presenting the title at the bell because they didn't even send a CMLL rep for the match. Hilarious shit. 3.75 stars B+. Claudio did a deadlift counter of a submission into a vertical suplex that looked great. Then he won in typical fashion. They did a gimmick where Marina Shafir stood up to Lance Archer, stared him down. That was hysterically dumb. And then after Claudio retained, Shafir got in the ring, flipped the bird, and left. Edgy. On Collision, the Young Bucks beat The Swirl in a match that happened for no reason. Jay Lethal came out of nowhere to now be the manager of Swirl, which is going from like mid to midder. The Bucks celebrated with their family afterward, which indicated more was coming. On Collision, the Rascals beat FTR in a tag team title eliminator, despite the Bucks already being #1 contenders. This was the main event. The match developed because FTR was angry walking into the Rascals' private area as they were indulging on munchies after getting high. So I gave it relevance credit since it was built on the show, but the whole concept of doing an eliminator and developing new #1 contenders when a full feud was ongoing is mind-numbing. The Bucks' late distraction is what allowed the Rascals to win with the push moonsault, which is called Hot Fire Flame. Good name. It was nice as a surprise decision, but again, the The Bucks were already number one contenders. It was nonsensical unless they're going to run a triple threat or something, but that's counter to the original booking, which is a heated rivalry between the Bucks and FTR. So GOA attacks after the bell. I could not understand why. Stokely threw powder on the Bucks' dad, so he spit at him. FTR then shoved the dad and gave a spike pile driver to someone who was called the Bucks' younger brother. He looked 15 years older than them. Perry also ran down, only to get taken out by Ricochet. Again, I'm not sure what demand had anything to do with this. That said, involving the family at least made the feud a little bit hotter and a little less boring because last week's shit was awful. Then on Dynamite, we had Bucks, Rascals, and Perry beat FTR on the demand in something called Mile High Madness, an anything goes 10-man tag team match that main evented the show. I gave it relevancy credit, again, because they built it on Collision, even if it was a cluster. Perry's music played until the first commercial break. They did crazy stuff in the crowd. Myron Reed, who was not in the match, wrestled anyway, so it was 6-on-5 at different points. It was not called a tornado match, but there was no tagging of any kind. Perry smashed a powder-filled vacuum cleaner over a dude's head. Jack took a back body drop over the top rope through a ringside table. There was a really cool four-way spot that was a superplex, power and glory, a flying headbutt, and a springboard 450. That was my highlight of the match by far. Ricochet took a double Spanish fly off the barricade into a table. Cash Wheeler literally went headfirst, unprotected, into a table. And then Ricochet, the only guy in the entire match with a singles title, got pinned for the second straight show. So Jack is going to get a title match because he pinned him. I presume that's the idea. But if you're going to pin him there, why did you pin him on Collision and not have Perry be the one to get the win? Well, Perry couldn't get the win because Perry wasn't in the match. It was Hangman who pinned him. But again, like, why pin Ricochet? You have two other dudes who can take the fall. This guy is your national champion. You're supposedly making this title into something. Guess what? They forgot about it again. Although, again, it's going to be Perry and Perry and Ricochet, I'm sure, at Revolution. If you like cluster matches and just want to see people doing moves, taking big bumps, no selling, none of it actually mattering, this was for you. I'm not even saying that as a criticism, by the way. People love that shit. And it was entertaining, no doubt. For me, it was chaos for chaos' sake. I'd much prefer a match that I can sink my teeth into if it's going to main event a show. But I'll go 4 stars A-. It was the match of the week in AEW for sure. Not even a question. On Collision, Thunder Rosa beat Julia Hart in 9 minutes. Rough match that happened because Rosa called out Thekla, despite being sidelined for 220 days and not deserving to be in the same conversation as the main champion right now. There was not any reason for Hart as the opponent, nor a promo between them, nothing. Thekla interrupted from the crowd after the bell, calling Rosa a dumb bitch for picking a fight with her after 8 months out, saying she has a death wish. I heard this was a game-changing promo from Thekla. It was quite good, no doubt, but this was not anything special like people were claiming. There's this strange, automatic exaggeration and hyperbole from some people when it comes to anything AEW does. They put on a good show. Oh my God, it's the greatest show. This doesn't compare to anything else. Oh, this promo from Thekla was generational. She's so effortlessly cool. Oh my God, that segment with MJF and Hangman was crazy. Yeah, it didn't make sense, but who cares? It's really frustrating as someone who tries to be down the line and judge everything evenly when people tell you something's incredible, not good. Hey, that was a really good match. It's a good promo. I can't wait to see it. Great. This is incredible. And your expectation is, oh my God, she's going to blow the roof off this place. And it's just like a normally good, above average promo. Chris Statlander helped ensure Rosa did not get attacked after the bell. That was kind of passed by live by commentary. Rosa then got a title match set for next week in her second match back after nearly a year sidelined. Heaven forbid AEW run a storyline for its main title. And then backstage, Rosa decided that Stat had to team with her to fight Sisters of Sin next week. She already beat Julia Hart, but now she needs to beat both Sisters of Sin for some reason. And then Stat refused to answer why she was involved in this. She just walked away. Is she going to turn back heel? What's happening? Why was Thekla not on the A show? That's what I want to know. On Collision, Megan Bayne beat a jobber in 90 seconds. So Excalibur goes, quote, "We have a standby match coming up." And then I shit you not, less than 10 seconds after he says this, Tony Schiavone screamed, "We have a standby match coming up next on AEW Collision." Commentary is dreadful, particularly with Schiavone. You want to get excited about a title match coming up? Great. I could see that, even if it's annoying to repeat it. For a, what they call it again? I'm trying to find the words. A standby match? You're going to get that excited and you're going to repeat it 2 times? What a stupid excuse for a squash, by the way. Oh, we have extra time on the show, so we're going to let Megan Bayne come out here and murder someone. On Dynamite, the women's tag team titles were Babes of Wrath retaining over Megabad in their third televised tag match against each other this month. Now, it was clear the heels were supposed to win, but Penelope Ford got injured doing a moonsault outside into 3 people, none of whom gave a shit to catch her. Looked like a sprained ankle. The match ended in disqualification when Lana Cross ran into the ring and hit Willow in the head with a title, despite Megan having the upper hand, driving her into the corner. She didn't save her partner. She just ran the DQ. Now, this was obviously an improv call to end the match because they didn't want Bane defeated and weren't sure if Ford was going to be able to wrestle if they did win the title, so I accept all of that. But with Cross there, they still could have changed the title and just teamed them up instead, or they could have just done the DQ in a way that made sense. But just like Thekla against Chris Statlander, Megabad had zero case whatsoever for another rematch when losing clean already. It's almost an identical situation. They realized, oh, fans are kind of into them. We should just change the title. We made the wrong decision, so let's rematch it without any storyline reason for it happening. On Collision, War Dogs interrupted commentary at their desk, wanting to kill Darby Allin and bleed Orange Cassidy dry. Gabe Kidd has an air of legitimacy to him. Clark Connors does not. It's been real frustrating how this feud has sputtered along when they probably could have done something with more meat on the bone and had Darby look awesome. You know, the whole deal about dragging behind the car, getting kidnapped, left in the desert, and then just shows up, does one thing and leaves. It's been a joke. On Dynamite, Kidd beat Cassidy. It was weird to go from a tag team challenge to a singles match with nothing happening in between, but it was relevant at least. He countered Orange Punch with a forearm, hitting a powerbomb pump knee, high angle suplex, and a lariat. Then Orange pulled out his not trying bullshit, so Gabe spit in his face because it's AEW, only to eat beach break. He won by using the referee as a distraction, gouging the eyes in clear view of the official. No DQ, and then hitting a pile driver. Absurd not to call that when it's a pure illegal move no matter what company you're in. The ref even yelled at him as he was doing it. Didn't call the DQ. Connors attacked, so Darby saved with a Canadian Destroyer and a stupid skateboard move that had zero impact. Truly struggling to care about this feud, just given the way it's been presented. The match will probably be good. By the way, if you come across the really stupid fake engagement Darby Uber interview, this thing, I watched it right before I taped the show. This thing is terrible. And I don't know what decade Darby Allin thinks it is, but he's running a shtick from like 25 years ago that is so passé. It's not edgy anymore, bro. You just kind of look stupid doing some of this stuff. On Collision, Tommaso Ciampa was backstage after, I guess, a week off. He gave respect to Mark Briscoe before telling Kyle Fletcher through the camera that he wanted a rematch. Solid enough promo. Fletcher on Dynamite had a pink strap TNT title. They should have changed the red ribbon to pink also because it really clashed, but it looked great other than that. He called it Pinky instead of Sylvie and said, AEW is where the best wrestle.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Kazuchika Okada then came up saying they're both better than Takeshita. Fletcher is his best friend, and they should team up as Proto-Okada on Collision. Okada has been so much better of late now that he's not pigeonholed into that stupid bitch gimmick. But it's insane that he's not involved in his own major storyline for the International Championship, the second biggest title in the entire company. I assume they're going to do Takeshita and Okada at All In, and that's why they're delaying it. But while you're waiting to set fire to that feud, Okada should be embroiled in another feud. There's so many people on this roster. There's so much talent they love to crow about. And this guy doesn't have any storyline for the championship. It's crazy. On Dynamite, Brawling Birds backstage last week bragged about dominating a couple jobbers. They said they were together because they want to beat the living piss out of people. Alex Windsor then said the F word before they said they don't give a flying F together because they're birds. So flying F. Then they decided to get some pints. It's so freaking try hard. The booking of Jamie Hayter should be studied for its ineptitude. What a waste. And lastly, on Collision, Private Party backstage played a drinking game with the Outrunners. Remember them? Bang Bang Gang. Remember them? The Acclaimed. Remember them? They weren't even arguing with each other. And Dalton Castle. They said they wanted to show what Private Party is all about. Okay, man, you guys were gone for a year. You lost your first match back. Please show me. I'm waiting. So that was AEW this week. There was a lot I heard about that I thought I was going to love. And I think that's probably the reason for some of my more extreme frustration than usual. I actually felt like Swerve Strickland's promo on the announce table was probably the best overall thing across the 2.5 hours of Dynamite nearly, and certainly among the best things across both shows. There was some good wrestling, of course, there always is in AEW. But when it comes to storytelling and getting people amped up for the big show, which is Revolution coming up, for me, they missed the mark in so many places. The hardcore fans, the sickos, They love it. And that's great. The question is AEW okay with that? Is that what they want their audience to be and nothing more? And if so, and they feel like they're making enough money and they're making a difference and they're creatively fulfilled and all the other things that you hear about AEW, that's fantastic. But with illogical booking, thrown together matches, and some of the stuff they keep doing, I don't really see this company growing unless they make some legitimate changes. They did the right thing because they were hemorrhaging ratings and attendance figures and everything last year. They decided to really focus on what people love about AEW, and that's positive. That was a really, really good decision. That doesn't mean you have to stay in that forever. At some point, you do need to try to expand. And I don't really see them doing that. Ratings are up, but it's also partially due to a complete redone Nielsen meter that has now changed, I think, 3 times, at least twice, and things were lower than they should have been. Now it feels like they're higher than they should have been, not just for AEW, by the way, for NXT and SmackDown as well. So like it's almost a false sense of security. Oh, ratings are up. Yeah, but they changed the formula. And like attendance they're saying is up. It's marginal. You're talking about a couple hundred people. And this is on the build to Revolution, which is one of their biggest shows of the year. It's also coming out of the holidays when things are normally lower because, people are trying to spend money on gifts and their family and stuff. So I don't know, man. I want AEW to succeed. Like that's the whole goal of the criticism. It always is with WWE and NXT as well. When we criticize, it's not because we just want to shit on stuff. It's because we want the shows we watch to be as entertaining and logical as they possibly can be. And we want the companies to thrive because we want wrestling to be awesome. But I don't know, these last couple of weeks on AEW, I thought they were really heading in the right direction. And just the convolution of some of this stuff is really, really frustrating. And the MJF Hangman thing, it really sent me when I watched that. I watched it on Thursday. It aired Wednesday. But watching it for the first time, I just could not believe what I was seeing. Maybe I'll get better next week. We will see. That is always the hope. Here at the Getting Over Wrestling podcast, we are not done for the week. We will be back on Saturday with your WWE Elimination Chamber instant analysis. Of course, we also have 2 WWE episodes already in the feed. Our breakdown of Raw and SmackDown. We talk a lot about AJ Styles and some real big storylines over there. And then a separate episode, your WWE Elimination Chamber Ultimate Preview. Make sure you listen to all 4 episodes this week. On the way out, allow the Silver King to remind you here at Getting Over.
It's all about Defiance.
So head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave a 5-star rating on Apple. Take a little extra time. Leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Getting Overcast on Twitter and Blue Sky. You get episode drops, news, analysis, highlights. You can send in questions and comments for the show. You can vote in the pre- and post-show polls surrounding Elimination Chamber. On YouTube, you can listen to the show, and you can watch full-length video interviews as well. Across the board, you can find us at Getting Overcast. And lastly, please remember,
I happen to love the number 5.
Hope you do as well. $5 a month, $50 for the entire year. You can become an official Getting Overhead. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You'll get bonus audio the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reactions to every major show, and exclusive news analysis posts every week. Again, that is buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Support us as we continue to support you with performance-enhancing audio injected right into your earlobes. That is it for today. This is the Silver King signing off and leaving you with just 3 final words. Bye for now.